Welcome to hii5radio, your Uganda's #1 radio station. Live in from Kampala, Uganda, Wandegea. Abraham Shidi taking you through the radio tech talk show with hii5radio. Today we shall be diving into the blockchain space with Mr. Pavel Sinelnikov from the ZKM. Pavel, can I hear from you as in your introduction and what your career is, what your profession is in the ZKM? Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started out in this space, I guess early 2017, and doing essentially educational workshops and presentations for crypto and blockchain. So this evolved for a while, where I worked for a company called Metis, and then from there, Metis as an integration team, essentially going and speaking with multiple different projects within the industry, and then getting them on board into the Metis ecosystem. From there, I'm now working at ZKM, and ZKM is a project building a ZK VM using the MIPS instruction set. But we are building a bit more than just the proof generation system. We're building a way to communicate across different types of blockchains trustlessly, and in a way where any type of messages can be passed between many different incompatible blockchains. So if it's EVM, non-EVM, and that's what we're currently focused on. So one of the big use cases is actually connecting Bitcoin to Ethereum, which we're currently working on right now. And what I do within ZKM, I'm currently the developer relations lead. So I basically create all of the developer guides, tutorials. There is a program for getting started in the ZK space. So I work with the team to essentially develop educational content. And I'll also be giving presentations directly about how we can use the system of, we call it entangled rollups, to create many different types of structures using this type of system. So hopefully that was a big summary, but definitely can unpack those aspects.
Oh, sure. Well, thank you for that overview of the background and bio about you. I am actually also happen to be one of the blockchain enthusiasts that has been in the blockchain space since way back 2017 till up to date, whereby I happen to first participate as a contributor, then mobilizer, and finally with some ambassador programs whereby I participated in the early grant, then MakerDAO contributor, then also into the Polkadot ecosystem, then finally the Ethereum ecosystem, where now I lived at Metis and finally to ZKM. So I presume we are on the right track to discuss much more to do with what blockchain is, crypto is, then Ethereum and ZKM finally, as you previously discussed with us. With a profound opportunity to have you this evening, can we now dive into what now ZKEVM or what ZKM is in general? If I can hear from you as we hear the listeners who are in this very call and are listening into hii5radio, we are glad that you will actually send in your questions via our WhatsApp group, and the WhatsApp group from the hii5radio. Then we can have those questions asked from one of the representatives we have from the ZKM blockchain protocol. To the point, can we have an overview of what ZKM is and where it has evolved? To you back, Pavel.
Absolutely. ZKM is right now building a network of ZKM is building a quantum network utilizing entangled rollups for universal settlement. So that's I guess the big vision and summary of what we are trying to build and connect. So we're essentially using entangled rollups, and same concepts as or same analogy as a quantum entanglement, with the ability to affect different types of blockchain systems using ZK proofs as the means to communicate information and achieve finality within these types of systems. So for example, I can generate a ZK proof that a certain action had happened, a swap or a burn transaction, or someone voted in a governance poll. And then from there, I can then generate a ZK proof that that action happened on this blockchain. I then can take this information, so like the actual transaction, I generate a proof from that. I then take this proof and then submit it to a completely different blockchain. This can be potentially Algorand, this can be Near, this can be Aptos, essentially any blockchain that has a type of smart contract programming language that can evaluate ZK proofs. So essentially any any blockchain that uses smart contracts will be able to evaluate those zero knowledge proofs and then make an operation. So in the case that I was describing, where I can bridge assets from one chain to the other, I can generate a ZK proof that I burn assets on one chain and then generate a ZK proof from that burn, and then I would then be able to send that proof to another blockchain, which then would be able to mint a corresponding amount of those assets. And then as a result, all systems are isolated, and we don't need another consensus mechanism. We can then just use ZK proofs as this means of indicating and finalizing those transactions on those specific blockchains. So I don't need another network, I don't need another blockchain in order for this verification to happen. And basically just use the secured, the native blockchain to essentially transfer assets. Whereas other bridges and other networks have to use their nodes or validators to make sure that everything is in sync. We just use ZK proofs without the addition of a consensus mechanism, which adds a layer of vulnerability potential. So hopefully that describes it. Let me know if you need me to unpack it further. There's definitely a lot in there, but happy to explain these different systems. I know it sounds complicated, but hopefully I'll be able to make things a little bit more simple.
Oh, sure. Well, from what I presume as what ZKM is providing, what would uniquely or what would be unique from what other blockchains are providing at the moment, with quite many challenges that we are facing in the blockchain already of what is already provided. We presume there are very many blockchains working on interoperability. That is now to do a shared communication and interaction between different other various blockchains. What unifies or what would make ZKM unique from other these blockchains we have seen?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess for us, the thing that makes us unique. So there are other blockchains out there that focus on the interoperability between different blockchains. Specifically, this is Polkadot and Cosmos. So two of those blockchains specifically focus on connecting other blockchains together. There are some limitations to those systems. For example, in Polkadot, you do need, they are changing this in the future, but you do need to stake a lot of DOT tokens in order to be included into their network, in order to benefit from that ability to communicate securely within their ecosystem. In Cosmos, I believe you need to be specifically focused on the Tendermint style consensus. And in that limits you to EVM operations. So EVM-based chains can integrate within their, or like EVM-based Tendermint style chains can integrate within that system, but it is limited to just those systems. What we're providing is the ability to integrate completely incompatible ecosystems. So this can be EVM, non-EVM, and with no additional consensus mechanism. So we don't add in another layer of nodes or multi-sigs or anything like that. We essentially facilitate the transfers through ZK proofs. And then as a result, we're able to be essentially an addition to these layer 1 or layer 2 blockchains, rather than needing to be on our own chain. We utilize the infrastructure that's already there. We're just there to communicate between these different ecosystems and then achieve that unified operations. So in the case of connecting incompatible ecosystems, Solana to Ethereum or Avalanche to Movement, there's different types of potential connections there, all with trustlessness and native security and liquidity as well.
Oh, well, thank you very much for that explanation. In my understanding, I presume ZKM focuses on entangled rollups, whereby I believe entangled rollups are deployed on all blockchain infrastructures, and their state is aimed at achieving this through a number of states like recursive zero-knowledge proofs. Maybe it would be worth mentioning that the vision for entangled rollups is not limited to interoperability. I can preferably say, like the Polkadot and the IBC chain does. I believe it is more than that. That's what I presume. Maybe then the asset transfer in design, maybe that is now for the Polkadot and whatnot. So we look at maybe a wider range of multiple chain applications and protocols, how they can leverage this kind of technology, the ZKM, under this lying infrastructure of the ZK EVM. Maybe I can take an example of, let's talk about DeFi, for example, right? Can you hear me, Pavel?
Oh, yes, yeah, I can hear you.
Let's take an example of whereby we're taking entangled rollups being leveraged into the DeFi space. That's the decentralized finance for the common people who don't understand what DeFi is in the blockchain. I presume we have first listeners, the newbies into the blockchain. That's why I want to simplify this for you. Pavel could be so much technical, being the dev from the ZKM, so I believe he could be so much technical. That's why I presume on bringing a use case, for example, that according to my understanding of what now entangled rollups intend to bring up is, let's take an example of whereby maybe let's talk about Sharif wants to exchange the Ethereum tokens for Bitcoin tokens. That is now what an example I can use. Traditionally, the process used to be or is we can either exchange on centralized exchanges, for example, or use the existing decentralized finance dexes, but we find that is now, for example, for bridging. If you want to bridge from one chain to another, but we find it is slightly a bit risky. I can mention risky with security, high fees, a lengthy time, transaction completion. I mean, a transaction can take longer, then there are high charges from one chain to another, then finally to what kind of token you are expecting. So I presume, however, these entangled rollups have come up with a use case now to provide solutions to this challenge we've been facing in this what we term as the traditional technology or traditional process we are talking about. Now that's to mitigate the challenges. I can presume we have one step for maybe Sharif initiating a trade. That's from Ethereum, where I brought an example of Ethereum, changing Ethereum or exchanging Ethereum from Ethereum network now for a Bitcoin token, example. We initiate a trade, then we shall expect a transaction verification, then an atomic swap, something to do with swapping from one or a third party, for example. It can even be a third party. Then we have to confirm and settle the transaction. Then we have the finality and the security issues, which is so much we are terming as the liquidity, as the risk side of it. Then we have the liquidity and the accessibility side of it. Entangled rollups enable seamless interoperability between blockchains or blockchain ecosystems, unlocking the liquidity across various assets and expanding the access to decentralized finance services for the user. Maybe an example like Sharif. We had it right away from Sharif initiating a trade. They're initiating a trade from one network or one blockchain to another. That's now from Ethereum to Bitcoin. Then there is a need for transaction verification. Then an atomic swap that will interact with the smart contracts between Ethereum network, then Bitcoin network. Then there will be need of maybe for Sharif to confirm the transaction true it is right to ready to be accepted. Then finality and security and liquidity that will come to the end. Maybe if I may dive into the questions that is to you, Mr. Pavel, that we've received from our communities. This is something we've discussed with the community, and they've given in their thought about what blockchain is in Kampala, basically Uganda and East Africa, or Africa in general. We find there are usually compromising challenges, whereby there is need for a number of blockchains have come into the ecosystem, into the communities, into the country, into the region in general. We've had seen Solana, we've seen Celo, we've seen Polkadot, we've seen Polygon, we've seen Algorand, and to mention but very many. So, one of the community members has been asking, do we categorize ZKM to being among the layer 1s or the layer 2s? What could define the layer 1s and the layer 2s? That is one of the questions we can hear from one of the community members. Pavel, to you, I hope you listen to me. Can we have your view about what we term as layer 1s and layer 2s? Then does ZKM qualify to be a layer 1 or a layer 2? Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And just the previous mention of bridge transactions, you did mention atomic swap, and technically speaking, we can provide atomic swap based functions using ZK proofs as the means as well. Atomic swaps, though, the limitations for them is that they have to have two parties essentially post assets. I believe it's a 24-hour period or some time amount if the transaction does not finalize. So if both parties do not agree within this specific time period, then it just does not go through. The limitation for that is that two parties need to agree in that specific time period, which is good if you negotiate it before, but it requires that negotiation piece where I post assets or I have to find someone that is willing to give me this amount of ETH for this amount of Bitcoin, and then as a result, I can do the swap. It's super secure. It's super like the assets are native on each chain, and they don't get sent unless both parties agree. So it's very secure. It's just a little bit liquidity inefficient within this contract, but it's still possible and able to be done. And there's definitely many use cases where maybe like large holders would be more open to this type of transfer. But to answer the question that you asked me about the layer 1s and layer 2s and like where does ZKM fit in? So ZKM isn't a layer, so it isn't a blockchain. It sits, I would say, in the intersection between different blockchains. So similar to how a middleware works. So it sits in between as more of the communication aspect. So in this case, we are similar to how Polkadot and Cosmos ecosystem work, except we are not a blockchain ourselves. So we sit in between different blockchains. And the reason why we're not a blockchain, the reason why we don't need to have another blockchain is because the proofs themselves are that verification of that transaction that happened on that blockchain. So because we facilitate, we can take proofs we can take operations that happened on one blockchain. We can generate a proof that operation happened. And then as a result, we can take this proof and then submit it to an entirely different blockchain, layer 1, layer 2, layer 3 even, and have this essentially proof do some action. So this could be governance mode, this can be reputation systems, this can be bridging, so like liquidity transfers from different chains. So a lot of what message passing already provides within the Polkadot and Cosmos ecosystem, we can provide without the addition of another blockchain. So hopefully that gives a little bit of an overview on where we sit in between these ecosystems. But that's why we specifically chose the words of a quantum network rather than a quantum layer, because we are connecting other blockchains to each other via entangled rollups. So it's like quantum entanglement for universal settlement.
Oh, well, thank you very much once again for that overview and explanation of what the desire the community would require. I can presume that a number of questions I want to begin with, especially from the community. Let's say. There is a question also in regards to whereby we have basically the Brocktech Bridge requires a number of the no's more than the questions. They would require to understand if there are developers, for example, in the house or in the community or amongst our team, how would they contribute to the ZKM protocol, or how would they be supported? And then, which language would they use possibly to contribute towards ZKM? That is to you, Mr. Pavel, once again.
Yeah, absolutely. We currently have everything in terms of the ZK per generation system. It's open source under the MIT license. So essentially this means that anybody can take code, they can make forks for it, and then they can also add on either additional functions or use it to create these types of proof systems for this type of application. We are primarily targeting the use case of trustless, essentially cross-chain bridging and messaging as well. So definitely, if members, your team, the people that are interested in essentially this type of outcome or function, we'd be definitely open to collaborate and see how we can get more people involved in building these types of systems. There can be, because we are a general purpose ZKVM, there's a lot more use cases that can be created on top of, or not on top of, but on top of, but also in conjunction with the trustless cross-chain bridging. So for example, you can make applications that, like a hybrid rollup, where I can essentially have either an optimistic way of transferring assets via the 7-day withdrawal period, or I can have a ZK method of withdrawing and pay like a little bit more to have my assets bridged to from layer 2 to layer 1. Because I know so if you're doing it from an optimistic rollup, you have to wait 7 days before you get your assets. But if you're doing a ZK rollup, then you wait, I don't know, I think it's like 15 minutes, but I think it could be a bit longer.
That's too longer.
But in this case, So if you want your assets to be let's say immediately accessible, then you would use that ZK rollup part. You would pay a little bit more, but if the timing is important for you, then you can use that method. So we're also looking into these other use cases. Definitely would be really interesting to come in and learn and contribute. We do have educational materials to get you started, but definitely this is a very new field, new space. So a lot to learn, but definitely if you're coming in and you have no idea what anything that I'm saying is, you're not alone. And there's definitely ways that you can make much larger impacts in this space because this is a much smaller community in terms of ZK development. And for the second question you asked, in terms of how, sorry, can you repeat the second question?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Can you repeat the second question?
The question was about how would they be supported if they need to, we've seen a number of grants, for example, from CERO supporting junior developers to develop or put up projects. We've seen prototypes of being supported. We've seen a number of bootcathon running in the country, workshops or meetups to mention. That is to mentor the developers and educate more junior developers from various institutions, or make collaboration from, maybe to mention the Starbucks. We have the Starbucks who have come to us when we just mentioned about our initiation of the podcast with ZKM. They asked, how do we collaborate with you guys in regards to working with ZKM? Or what would support would be provided if we have a number of developers or builders that want or feel associated and would want to come up build this number of projects on ZKM or Ethereum? Does ZKM cut across a number of blockchains that even if I'm from Polkadot, I would be supported in raising or marketing my project? I think in something reasonable that way. I don't know if you understand it.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of support, so because this space is very small, I think, I saw on developerreport.com, there's about 20,000 active developers for Ethereum, or not Ethereum, but in the blockchain ecosystem. Let me just link that over here. Yeah, about 22,411, just so you can see where I'm getting this information from. So that's just within the blockchain space. And so if there's only 20,000 people working within the blockchain ecosystem, there's different categories of people working. So for example, in the Polkadot space, there is 792 active developers for that. In Z, that number is much less. So in terms of the what we're looking to provide is essentially educational material and content that would help bring relevant skills to people looking to explore the ZK space. So we want to make things, and I know like me talking about all this like complicated, cross-chain quantum network, blah, 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 blah. It sounds complicated, but definitely we do have additional courses, educational material, different things like that would be able to help get people that might not be familiar with blockchain, people that might not be familiar with ZK up and running within the ecosystem. And then we'd be able to continuously support essentially, basically educational initiatives. And we also have our own points program, which we are using as a means to gauge engagement through our community and system. So these points basically give you more access to more content and different community groups, which then would be more relevant. So if you're more of the person that just wants to that's just interested in the developments of the project, you will have access to those groups, assuming that you participate within the points program. But if you're a developer looking to build and explore, there are these courses that already exist, and they're open on our YouTube. And then that's how we want to support new developers coming into this space. And then definitely we'd be open to talk about potential use cases that are interesting for adopting in these systems. But again, we're focused on the messaging, decentralized messaging part using ZK proofs. But if there's things that people want to work on and explore, we're open to collaborate in that regard. But for educational material, that's what we specifically provide for value for developers within the ecosystem. And there's definitely a lot of impact that you can make, even if nothing makes sense right now. This is pretty new in terms of the field. And it's just getting more interesting, I would say.
Oh, well, thank you very much. Maybe still at the very point, the African continent still fails because I've moved to various communities from right away from Kenya to Nigeria. I moved to Zambia, South Africa, and then Ghana, for example. I've found there is a slight difference. I can hear a response from the support towards the African community. This feel they are left out due to the fact that it is a slow continent that has come, or is an underdeveloping continent that is supported or is growing. They feel they are left behind, or we feel we are left behind due to the fact that we ain't being considered. How do we take a special note, especially from the Metis ecosystem, then particularly from the ZKM, in regards to this kind of challenge that the African continent, do we see ZKM considering globally the continent, the whole world, as in also particularly with also focusing on Africa towards the development towards the development of the technology in blockchain and Web3 in general?
Yeah, so let me see if I can reiterate the question. Do I see the space for? Oh, sorry. Continue.
To simplify it, there is a general challenge to do with Africa in particular, whereby because we see under the growth statistics, we see Africa as the last, then Asia maybe next, and then Europe, then maybe America. Sorry, South America, then America finally. Do we see there is a special provision for having to focus on Africa, particularly towards the contribution, then growth and education towards Africa from the ZKM and Metis in general?
In terms of our initiatives, we have educational and course content in English. So we haven't localized the content just yet, but we're exploring means to use translation software to make it more accessible for a larger range of people. Right now, there's definitely a very small group of people that can create the content. So we are definitely looking for people that can maybe help in terms of explaining this to people in different in other countries, other cultures, other places in a way that's understandable to them within that environment. Like I want to. The goal of it is we want to create the base and core educational systems, which then later can be adopted by people in non-English speaking environments. I think that's what will lead to adoption, and we currently all the resources are for us are focused on actually creating content. So that's another way that people can help, even if you're not developer focused or developer related. If you're just interested, we are looking for describe this technology in a way where it's understandable to a majority of people. So that's I would say how we're helping or focusing on different types of other countries is specifically with the educational content, but we do need help with localizing as some of the documents get a little bit complicated, but hopefully we're able to simplify them together within this system.
Thank you. I find a number of challenges that I find as one of the community leads in Africa, possibly under the BrockTech Bridge, and where we also have the BrockTech School that is focused on education. Then entirely, BrockTech Bridge focuses on the awareness and adoption and education as well. This is whereby I shared a link with you. I think you've taken a dive into it and what activities have done, what not we've done. This is why I really related so much about this. But still, there are a number of questions. I don't know how much we can summarize them. We took longer than expected. We thought we'd be here for 30 minutes or 40 minutes, but we are now exceeding. And there are a number of questions, and I think we must not leave untackled. A number of questions may be classified, could be one from the question from Kakoza Vianney that goes, how does ZKM plan on security? Does it plan to achieve decentralization like any other blockchains? Truly, yes. Then how does it plan to? If we feel maybe decentralization can be achieved through nodes, a number of nodes, do we look at a centralized node running only in Europe, in America? How about Africa that has maybe a higher poverty rate, has low electricity, to mention, and maybe limited bandwidth internet? Do we plan on achieving decentralization as a security, or do we plan decentralization for ZKM and in general blockchain? How would we plan on this as one of the challenges, especially from the ZKM?
Yeah, decentralization is one big factor. I would say for us, the reason why we are secure, why we say we're trustless. Decentralization and trustlessness is very closely correlated, and the way that we secure the network is by using the ZK proofs. So ZK proofs essentially prove computation, any form of computation, or specifically for our ZK VM, it proves any form of computation. And then as a result, I can then have this proof that says that this computation that was executed is correct. As a result, I don't need to have additional consensus. I don't need to have additional nodes or additional even decentralization for this type of system, since anybody can come in and generate a proof for any type of operation. So I don't have to rely on a specific computer to facilitate this transfer. I don't have to, or facilitate this message. You can actually take the code right now and generate proof on your own, and then have that as a means to transfer assets or pass messages across different blockchains. Now, currently that system isn't live and working. We're still working towards achieving that network of different types of blockchains together. But the idea is we don't have to rely on additional nodes or additional decentralization because anybody can just take that node and then run the proof generation process on their own. So they don't need to depend on anyone else. Now, for convenience purposes, yes, definitely that level of you might not want to run a node locally on your machine. Maybe people don't know how, and it's just additional work. But in this case, even if the network goes down, even if ZKM would go bankrupt or whatever would happen, the ZK proof systems are live, and anybody can come in and generate a proof to, for example, still be able to transfer assets, even if ZKM ceases to exist. So that's the the idea, is that even if everything shuts down, you still have the ability to transfer assets via these proof systems. So that's the bread and butter of why we're building this, why we're focusing on building this, is because it's much more secure and decentralized than other systems that are out there. And then having the ability to pass messages using ZK proofs is a very important characteristic, and I think it'll enable a lot of these cross-chain applications connecting different networks together via these ZK proofs.
Oh, well. Then another question goes by from Akankwasa Sharif, where he goes by asking, as we see the Bitcoin halving go on and expect a number of builders who've been building into the recession, when do we expect the mainnet launch of ZKM?
Yeah, mainnet launch is, I would say, a little bit of a ways away. We don't have a clear timeline for when mainnet will be launched. Right now, we do have the ability to, people have the ability to run this node hardware on their own personal laptops or computers. We did actually, decrease the hardware requirements for actually running these proofs from, I believe it was like 64 gigabytes was the minimum amount of RAM that you need, which is a huge amount, to now only needing 16 gigs of RAM. So that's still a lot. Mobile phones, for example, have, like modern mobile phones have about like 8 gigabytes, 12 gigabytes of RAM. But computers also have that ability to have like an increased amount of RAM. The more RAM you have, the faster the proof generation process is. But essentially, that's one way that you can get started is just by running a node, or running a prover node on your local machine, just to see how it works, how it generates the proof, how it uses the system for this. And I believe you asked me what kind of language would people be building these systems in? Because it's a generalized ZKVM, technically speaking, any type of language would be able to be supported. Right now, we are focused on the Golang, but I know Rust is something that we're currently working on for the integration side, because Rust is used by almost every
and we feel Rust
every
is more
system out
secure.
there.
Yes.
Yeah, so Rust support will happen. Right now we're working on performance improvements to the actual system, because if you make things, if we decrease the amount of RAM, for example, or we increase the speed of the proving system, then more people would be able to essentially just run it on their computers without the need for let's say buying a AWS instance in order to run some type of proving systems, or in order to run the actual node. So we don't want people to essentially spend X amount of money or time into this. We want people to try it out without the need for significant investment in actually running the software. So hopefully that answers the question about like how or when mainnet is. So we're still working on performance improvements, optimizations, and the overall architecture of this type of cross-chain messaging via ZK proofs. So that's why I say that it's definitely very new ZK technology, and you can 100% make an impact within this space. Maybe even more so than if you were to come to Ethereum-based solutions now, because right now it's, you know, DEXs and lending protocols already exist, and there's a lot of noise within the these other ecosystems. ZK is still a very new field, so definitely a lot more opportunity there.
Oh, well, maybe a question personally can ask, if we already said examples from BlockTech Bridge community or the blockchain team, this would feel maybe particularly would want to contribute towards ZKM and the blockchain entirely. What fields are available or positions would be available that passionate contributors would really now take advantage of? Then two, whereby, for example, local use cases would ZKM be applied?
So the question is like, what kind of use cases can be done right now with ZK proofs? Is that the question?
I try to summarize it, the contribution any user who is passionate about blockchain and maybe ZKM in particular, they would contribute or maybe offer to the technology with ZKM or blockchain in particular. How would they? Then two is, what example of use case, local use case, maybe for particular Africa, if you know about Africa, I don't know if you come to Africa before, what local use case would you portray to the listeners?
Got it. Okay. So in terms of what can be done right now within the contribution standpoint, so we are developing the educational materials. We currently have 3 programs. One is the Education Hub, which is more of the lectures, and then there's quizzes. And then they teach about just generic ZK proving, as well as just the mechanics on like, people's misconceptions to what a zero knowledge proof is. People think that zero knowledge means privacy, and it does in some cases, but what we're using ZK proofs for is succinctness. We are proving computation that occurs within this system, and as a result, any form of computation can be proved and verified on any type of blockchain using these proofs. Sorry, I got a bit sick for some reason, talking through a lot. But in terms of how people can help and contribute to this, is definitely going through these educational programs and then providing feedback for us. That's one primary way to get started, because we don't expect that people would be able to, after one video or something like that, after one lesson, start contributing in terms of developer support. So right now we want to just start small, get feedback, and then anything that you would want to provide in terms of the educational solutions. That's what we're primarily focused and targeted. And then in the case of what local use cases within Africa can be adopted or can be used with ZK proofs. So when we think of ZK, we can create situations where ZK can be used, but in terms of adoption, that's where the problem is. Where let's say we're creating, you can technically use ZKM for example, identity. I can verify this type of government ID, generate a proof for it, and then not reveal any information about that ID to anyone, and it still can be used.
Maybe excuse me. Maybe if I can cut you short. He particularly mentioned that with an exception of identity, where else do we term or bring in the ZKM? Then the procession was, can you please, in bold depth, explain what ZKM is?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, for identity, so there needs to be a lot of infrastructure and support to be able to support the use case of, for example, taking your ID, scanning it, generating a ZK proof from it, and then taking that to, for example, a bar or a nightclub, and then having the bouncer or the person that's like at the front checking the IDs to be able to also have a means to check the ZK proof. So there's a lot of infrastructure that needs to be in place before ZK proofs can be adopted and integrated within, I would say, physical society. That being said, things might be a bit easier in some areas. We're focusing on the blockchain space because it's the easiest to come in and it makes the most. Let's say it makes the use case for trustless cross-chain bridging. That itself, there's billions and trillions of dollars in all of these blockchain networks, and that right now everyone is isolated from each other. So the idea is that we can solve this trillion-dollar problem by focusing directly for blockchain systems, and then later on, when these systems are already adopted by securing these trillions of dollars, other adoption can occur from the technology that is being created. So I would say it's a bit difficult to use ZK proofs in real life cases, but it's much easier to use it in the blockchain and crypto ecosystem. So hopefully that answers that question. So identity is that big thing where everyone says, oh, well, ZK proofs can be used for identity. But then when you ask how, then it's like, well, you need a mobile phone app that can be able to verify the ZK proofs. You need to convince a club or a restaurant or whatever it is to scan the ZK proof. You need a ton of adoption to occur. Same way that crypto payments haven't been adopted everywhere in the world. But I do think that there is a large potential for places like El Salvador. They're saying like, yes, Bitcoin is the national currency. So like with that, I think it'd be easier to get that adoption when governments approve that. But until then, I do think that it'll still be a while before these types of systems will be implemented in real life. But until then, we'll solve our $1 trillion problem in the blockchain space. And then you asked what the use case for ZKM is, just in general. So ZKM is a proof generation system for generalizable computation. And as a result, it can be also used for any type of computation that you're essentially proving succinctly. So for example, another use case is the hybrid rollup, which is, or like the scalability solutions. So we know that there's like ZK Sync or Tyco or like other different types of rollups that exist. They're all mainly EVM. So there's not really a lot of non-EVM rollups. What we would be able to support is rollups that are built on non-EVM chains, and as a way to so people can essentially use our proof generation system, to be able to create rollups, for example, on Solana, or rollups on Algorand, or rollups on Aptos. So these different types of ecosystems that exist, where they might be able to process 2,000 transactions per second, 10,000 transactions per second, but we're still, Visa can potentially handle about 60,000 transactions per second. So definitely these scalability solutions, or most layer 1 blockchains, can definitely benefit from having the ability to create roll-ups specifically for their solution. So ZKM can be used as a multi-tool. In this sense, you can, because it's just a proof generation system, but we are building architecture to help make it easier to integrate it with other existing applications and use cases. And we're focusing on the hardest ones first. So we're focusing on the trustless cross-chain bridging. We're focusing on the Bitcoin, connecting Bitcoin to Ethereum. We're focused on a hybrid rollup scenario, which is essentially focused on the EVM use case for using our proof generation system for the EVM, but then also we have the ability to use it for non-EVM as well. So that's where it's a lot of cool things can be built on top of that. And I don't think that being based anywhere in the world has any impact over how much you can do within this space. So you can live, as long as you have an internet connection, I think you can make massive contributions to these types of systems. Yeah, I guess that's some of the use cases in summary of how you can get involved and contribute, not just being based in one location. Yeah.
Sure. I will actually endeavor that you join in our community, maybe to share much more that regards to this, because that's where the field is. As we come or tune into our last maybe questions from the callers who are tuned in today, I have to remind you that we are here live on hii5radio, Uganda's #1 radio station and online radio station in Kampala, Uganda, Wandegea. This is partnering with a BlockTech Bridge, an education, awareness and adoption platform that's based in Kampala, Uganda, entirely looking on challenges that are facing blockchain technology in Africa. If I can pick on one of the callers, or two from the callers that are listening in, I see a number of calls joining in. Let me pick this number for 1-2 live questions.
Shidi Abraham.
Yes, sir. I can hear you. Whom am I talking to?
You're speaking to Peter from Kanungu.
Yes, Peter from Kanungu, I can hear you. Do you much understand about what blockchain is or ZK EVM rollups are?
Yeah, so Shidi, I've been enjoying the program.
Yes, please.
And I am someone who is passionate about technology and Web3. So I appreciate the kind of work that hii5radio is doing for giving us this kind of platform for you people to discuss things related to Web3.
Yes.
And I would also like to thank the work being done by BlockTech Bridge, because at least what inspired me to get into Web3 was BlockTech Bridge. I attended some of the meetups related to Web3, and I got in love with Web3, and I'm currently trying to learn how to program, to create programs in Web3. So it is this kind of program that has actually made me call you. I would like to know, I have friends of mine who also love Web3, but they don't have as much information like I do. I wanted to know whether BlockTech Bridge may be, because I've enjoyed the program about ZK, but I wanted to learn more. I don't know whether as BlockTech Bridge you have an arrangement for us, because I have friends who are into Web3 and they really want to learn, because we've been listening actually to this program. I wanted to know what we can do to learn more about ZK, because I understand that BlockTech Bridge, you people offer online courses about Web3, but I wanted to know whether maybe you can give us information about ZK, or whether we can come and learn. So I'm calling as someone who wants to learn because I'm passionate about the technology. I don't know whether you have an arrangement with us. Otherwise, one more last question. Does ZK have a reward program for early contributors? Because we've talked about running nodes, but I may not want to run nodes. I may want to contribute to the ecosystem, maybe as an influencer or in some other way. So maybe I can have that question answered. Thank you for the great work, Shidi, and for hii5radio for giving us this program.
Oh, well, thank you very much, Mr. Sharif.
Yes.
Mr. Peter. Sorry. Mr. Pavel, did you hear the questions?
Yes, yeah.
Maybe to begin with, I can begin with our own program that we actually offering. BlockTech Bridge also has a platform whereby it offers education services, that is blocktechschool.com, where Mr. Peter, you can also join in our online and physical programs that will be happening in our offices in Kampala one day, basically, where you can tune in or come attend in person. We shall be also partnering with ZKM in a few days to come to look or make sure that we forward with them. We can achieve the education program where we can share the materials related or curriculums that we can attend in person and understand much more on how we can contribute to the program. Back to you, Mr. Pavel. The question was, how do you plan on contributing or rewarding the other contributors towards this ecosystem, ZKM platform or ZKM protocol?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm definitely open to share all of the educational content and lessons that we're providing related to the ZK space. That's the, we have videos, we have live AMAs in our Discord. We also have Twitter spaces talking about all of these concepts. I'm giving a Discord AMA on Tuesday, and then definitely if you take a look at the ZKM socials, you will be able to see more specifically the dates and the topics as well. We want to essentially create a way that people can come in and learn how to get started within the system, because I think that's the biggest barrier is that educational piece. So definitely we'd be open to look at contributing to the educational content for BlockTech Bridge, and then also we're consistently sharing all of these ideas and information on our own community channels as well. So definitely would recommend to go check it out and see if this is that you're interested in learning more about. But definitely the ZK space is getting a bit more traction, and but it's still very, very small. So if you're learning blockchain, definitely I would say ZK would be a very good tool to learn, because then you'd be ahead of a lot of the people already in the industry, and definitely a very useful skill to learn.
Well, thank you very much once again, Mr. Pavel. As we come to the end of the program, we were disturbed by the internet. I thank you for joining us on hii5radio partnering with BrockTech Bleach. As we come to the end or the conclusion of the program, what kind of regards or what kind of last message would you disseminate to the listeners?
This is for me. Just any type of information, just final words, right?
I just mean, as we come to the end of the program, we took longer here, more than expected, and there are a number of listeners tuned in tonight, more than 1,000 plus. I cut the number of calls, I reduced them to one, just because we took longer here. What kind of last message or regards would you disseminate to the listeners who are tuned in tonight?
Absolutely. In the ZK space, I think I've mentioned how it's much smaller than what the entire blockchain ecosystem is. That I believe that ZK is one of the most important technological advancements in blockchain. But currently, there's a very big barrier to entry to come on board. We are looking to reduce, so ZKM, and then in collaboration with educational institutions, are looking to decrease this gap, make it easier to come in and learn about this space. Definitely a little bit complicated, but worth your time 100%. If you're interested at all in blockchain, I would definitely definitely recommend taking a look at ZK technology, because it's just going to be more important as time goes by. So that's the final words. Definitely learn about ZK, and because it will be used in many different types of blockchain ecosystems, and then potentially in the future, once blockchain gets adopted a bit more around the world, then ZK will definitely follow with that. But yeah.
Oh, well, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure hosting you tonight. Once again, Shidi Abraham, taking you live through this podcast and radio program show with hii5radio in partnership with BrockTech Bridge and BrockTech School, an education and learning platform of the blockchain technology. I've been hosted and having our guest as Pavel Sinelnikov, right? Do I have the right spelling?
Yes.
Pavel Sinelnikov. Thank you very much for joining in, listeners. And thank you so much, Pavel, for joining us this evening. I take a privilege to thank you very much. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you as well, Abraham, for hosting me on this show.
I hope if I take a privilege next time to invite you, you will be really enjoying our time session. We do not have enough of our questions answered, but we were limited with time. Next time better. I hope to join in next time with you live on hii5radio and BrockTech Bridge podcast.
Awesome. Thank you.
Oh, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.